Last time in Art versus Artist, we focused a little bit more on the artist. So we're going to do a little bonus for you guys and talk about the art. This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show where we discuss any and all aspects of pop culture. We are your hosts, Tyler.
And Chris.
Like we said in the opening, do a little bonus. So where do you want to start with this one?
So I appreciate you indulging me in this. I woke Tyler up in the middle of the night on my flight of fancy when I realized it was mostly me. I think I steered us more so to the idea that people are judged in the court of public opinion. Some of these people's art can be slandered or shamed, or you can even be looked at differently for still enjoying it, because that's something that's important to me. Because I can even still feel conflicted about things. How do you separate Thriller after everything everybody says about it? Every comedian, even the kindest ones, will still take a cheap shot at Michael. When that bugs me, when all you need is especially in this day and age, whether you believe cancel culture, counterculture does exist. Whether you believe cancel culture exists or not, people can still try and get you canceled by slandering your name. So should that happen, what do you do? And so I focused on those artists because I feel not to vindicate any of them or that all of them are innocent. I think OJ did it allegedly. Also, that was proven in civil court, but that doesn't matter. That's just a money thing. And then he's so flagrantly open about it, like writing a book like, if I did it, here's what I do. By the way, this is only a slightly different version of what actually happened. That's not the subtitle of the book. But he did write, look it up. He did write that book. So I'd like to focus more so on the art and why this is important, because art in our society is important. It's what makes, I think it's what separates us from animals and like non-thinking, logical beings like the Borg or something. That's fiction. But just to say, if we were to evolve beyond this and be nothing and just have everybody has the same chair, everybody has the same bed, and it's just 1984 or whatever, that's an artless society. So let's say we did separate OJ's art from himself. What's worth keeping? Old football games and that one Leslie Nielsen movie? Oh well. So Johnny Depp, that's a big one still right now that I think the court of public opinion that is interested in it can obviously see what she did. She being, I don't know who. Mm-hmm. What's he got? So that last Pirates of the Caribbean movie was awful. That sucked. And he sucked in it.
That's easy to see, though. That was like when his mom was sick and all that. So his mind was clearly elsewhere.
And he was going through what he was going through with said woman. He had his finger chopped off and all that, or however it happened. Paint can or something. Having said that, Johnny Depp has two careers. And I'm not talking about like art and movies and music, although that's three separate avenues that he goes down. He has two movie careers. There's probably people know him from, say, Edward, like the Disney movies he was in, and like all the mainline stuff, the Pirates of the Caribbean's movies. And I am having a hard time thinking of a lot of the other big blockbuster stuff. But he was in, Love 'Em or Hate 'Em. That first Alice in Wonderland movie made a lot of money. Mm-hmm. The second one wasn't nearly as good. It still made a fair amount of money. I think it still made its money back, at least in other markets, and probably cost a lot to make too, though. There's the Tim Burton films, which that's always exaggerated. People use that as a cheap joke, which I don't think is really funny, because Tim Burton's actually worked with other people more than he's worked with Johnny Depp at this point. Having said that, they did make a few films together. Sweeney Todd, Edward Scissorhands.
Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow is a big one. So these are all, like mainstream big movies, but Johnny's also been in like a lot of underground movies that or at least like, how do I want to put this, not as well known films, not underground. I mean, not underground, it's not like
less mainstream appeal.
less
because he was in one or two of Jim Jarmusch's, and his work is almost a love it or hate it kind of thing.
Yeah, he was in Ed Wood, which that That's another Tim Burton film, but one that it was made to be like a B movie about a B movie director. Dead Man, I think that was the
Jim Jarmusch.
Yeah. Nick of Time, which is probably like better known at the time, you know, like one of those suspense thriller movies. Felt like, you know, that like gets lost to time, but at the time it was probably pretty well known. That's with Christopher Walken plays the bad guy in that. That's pretty good. Donnie Brasco in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, pretty big, but The Ninth Gate and The Astronaut's Wife. The Ninth Gate, pretty good, pretty dry, but I think pretty good. The Astronaut's Wife, one of the worst films. Chocolat, Come At Me Bro. The Man Who Cried, that was another like weird one. From Hell, I think probably a lot of people forget about. That's got
Heather Graham.
Heather Graham and the guy that played Hagrid. It's escaping.
Was it Coltrane?
Yeah.
Robbie Coltrane?
Yeah. And then after that, we get into the Pirates movies. But he was also in Secret Window. It's a Stephen King horror film. The Libertine, which, I mean, you'd have to be that Johnny Depp fan to have seen The Libertine. Finding Neverland, a movie about, a biopic about J.M. Barrie, the guy who wrote Peter Pan, as well as other things. There's a bunch of big name films after that. Wonka, Corpse Bride, 2 Pirates movies back to back, then Sweeney, the film adaptation of Sweeney Todd. But he also had a bit role in The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Public Enemies was actually pretty big at the time. Love it or hate it. The Tourist. I'm naming off... see, this is my point here, and we can go on. He has these 2 careers, and it begins to get more into, as we go forward, more into movies that people are more likely to forget or not have seen in the first place because they're more not B movies, but, you know. So here, way later on, there was a movie called The Professor. He plays the titular professor who's trying to figure out what he wants to do with the latter half of his life. Just from 2019 to 2023, there was Waiting for the Barbarians, Minamata, Jean du Barry, where he played Louis the 15th, and something that comes out this year called Modi, I think. Just saying, he goes to these opposite extremes. Like, he'll do something that's just a passion project or something he really believes in or wants to do to, like, keep his acting chops. And then he'll do a Pirates movie or a Harry Potter movie or, you know, the big thing. And you'll still see him, you know, flexing his acting muscles. I think both are worth it. There's Michael Jackson, who, revolutionized the way we view music videos, the way we view music as a visual medium in 2 ways. Was there dance before Michael Jackson? Yes, of course there was dance before Michael Jackson. I'm talking about dance before off-the-wall Michael Jackson in the early 80s. Was there dance? Yes. There's been dance goes with music since somebody banged on the first animal skin thousands, if not hundreds of thousands years ago. But Michael Jackson, I think, really pushed forward the way we view that and the way we view it on camera. There were music videos, promotional videos that go back to, you know, the earliest pop records when we started combining.
There's a reason that he's not been dethroned as the king of pop, even with the allegations.
Yeah. So he started making little films, like the full version of Thriller with all the extra stuff where him and the girl go to a movie, and there's like zombie version of him, werewolf version of him, and then at the end when it was it all a dream, different version. How is that? Like well over 10 minutes?
I think it's close to 15.
Okay. I forgot. I should have had some of this, but just to say, you know, and he would go on to make like Ghosts. People probably forget about or haven't seen this, but he did like a very specifically Halloween, another one, because Michael loved Halloween. Right. He did one that was like, I think it's got 3 or 4 songs in it. I want to say 3, but that hedging my bets. And it's about this old man that comes to persecute Michael, just, you know, because he's weird, which he's gotten that his whole life. Thing is, if you watch this, it's probably on YouTube somewhere. The old man is also played by Michael Jackson. And it's they go through, I think the credits have the behind the scenes of them putting the prosthetics on. So he looks like Jim Falwell or something, Jerry Falwell, or Pat Robinson or something, to just portly old man. And but then once you see him dance, you're like, no, who the did they get to do this part? No, they got Michael Jackson. He wanted to do both. So anybody who wants to say Michael's not a good actor because you've seen that weird movie where he turns into a spaceship at the end of it, watch Ghosts. And, you know, it's a bit much, but still. That happened! Did you not remember Moonwalker? It's what the video game of Michael Jackson is based on. Remember the video game where you would be in the arcade and you're playing a video game and you're playing Michael Jackson? And then, like, his special move when you powered up was him to dance, and he takes his hat off, throws it, and it flies around the room killing all of your opponents. Yeah, that. Okay.
Yeah.
Bill Cosby. I'm speed running through this. I'm kind of a similar opinion to Bill Maher on this one, that, like, I don't think Cosby, for me personally, yes, I was exposed to him a lot, and he was always on TV, and I did watch a lot of Cosby Show. I don't think he's that funny. I think he kind of, like, powerhouses his way through being funny, you know, just like the whoa.
Yeah.
And it was like after a certain point he was famous for being famous. Did he have, like, it's so strange to separate, because a lot of people, there's nuanced there was one I found last night and I didn't have time to watch it, but a nuanced conversation between W. Kamau Bell and Trevor Noah. I'm interested to hear this conversation / debate about Bill Cosby, because there is a statute of limitations on sexual crime, and for a lot of people I could easily see somebody not coming forward with something. So for me, evidence is definitely there. That's for me. I'm not trying to convince anybody else of that, but what I am saying is I think there's other things. I think it's easy enough to let that one go. If you feel strongly enough about it that you can watch this, you could watch the Cosby Show and take something away from it. There's other actors that were in that show that I still get excited to see, because it's like, oh man, you know, like Malcolm Jamal Warner. It's awesome to see him somewhere, because he felt like that was my analog in that show.
That was always my thoughts on certain things, because it's like, for me, yeah, it's easy to separate Bill Cosby because the evidence is there, and it's hard to go back and be like, oh yeah, this is a great moral compass, knowing what I know now. But at the same time, that takes away from everybody else that put in their hard work and effort into all those projects.
Yeah, and that's why I say this is maybe the hardest one, really, because there's a wealth of work and it's pretty wholesome. There's nothing really to say like any of his art was controversial and didn't have a good message, because it did. It all generally did, and mostly had a good message, if a message at all. You know, a lot of his stand-up comedy was just comedy. The Family Show was a family show with good family values, and it showed a successful black family, like with a doctor and a lawyer as mom and dad, respectively. And that was important to see on TV for a lot of people. I think for white and black people, or all, let's just break it down to all ethnicities, that like you don't just have to have the token black characters in there that, you know, ambiguously and something.
That came out in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It started.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, like, a lot of the sitcoms and stuff then were like broken families. Either the parents were divorced or the mom was dead or something. Mm-hmm. So you had some kind of dysfunction. And so to see a whole family unit working together, that was, I'd say, pretty big.
Yeah, and they had extended family. You know, like the grandparents were always involved or there. The family's pretty big. And not to say that nothing like this had been done before, but you don't need just one. And you need like a good powerhouse of it. It ran for a really long time. Is a lot of it like cheesy now in retrospect? Probably, yeah, sure. But if you can get something good out of that and you don't feel conflicted, I'm not here to say that. And that's what this debate kind of boils down to. It's really about where you draw your own personal line, and if you can do this. And I think it's different for everybody. And it's also probably said this in the other one, it's a case-by-case basis. Because then there's one that is maybe the least controversial one, but it's the one that I hate bringing up the most. And it's Led Zeppelin. And it's not the fish story. It's the rampant plagiarism accusations.
I disagree with those plagiarism.
You disagree with plagiarism? I do too.
No, I mean, like, I disagree that they were
plagiarists.
Yeah.
Oh. Like, so you disagree with the premise that they did it at all?
Yeah.
So you have no problem listening to Led Zeppelin?
No. And why I say that, and bear with me, I'll forget some of the terminology.
Please.
But I say look up Rick Beato. He'll probably do a better job of explaining this.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
But what are the things that Zeppelin were accused of stealing was actually just a very common chord progression used in the time. And so pretty much had Zeppelin been like successfully charged in court, that would set a bad precedent, not just for them, but for every musician going forward. Because every pop song, even a lot of rock, metal, they all use similar chord progressions to some degree. And if you can copyright chord progressions, then everybody owes everybody money. So, yeah. And especially when you got someone like Rick breaking it down and actually playing out the differences, like, you know, to the untrained ear, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds real similar. Yeah, because it's the same chord progression or a similar type of chord progression, but it's not note for note the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think everyone needs to look into that more and realize that happens in all of music.
There's the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I can't remember the two songs, but this is pretty easy to find. Now, here's the thing. I have a hard time hearing this one, but apparently it's there. I had to listen to it a bunch before I really was like, okay, yeah, but is it like that close? Now, apparently Tom Petty did hear it, but when asked about it, he was like, I don't see the big deal. It's either, it's similar, sure, and maybe they were influenced by it. And that's the thing, is like sometimes you hear something and you want to do your version of that, and it's just in there. And you also could be committing that cryptomnesia that Louis C.K. talked about when he confronted Dane Cook on like his actual show. So Dane Cook agreed to come on and do this weird fictional versions of themselves, because it's not a documentary thing, but Louis is essentially playing himself in the show. It's strange. And I never saw all of the show, but you could hear something and have it in the back of your mind. Information is one thing. Like if you string together words for a joke or a concept for a joke and have a similar joke, that actually is much easier to do. Or imagine that. That's an easy thing to imagine, right? Now imagine strings of notes. And by notes, I mean like melodies and piano keys,
because there's only so many notes, and there's only so many combinations of those notes that sound good.
Yeah, you start getting into those things, and especially in our Western culture, we're exposed to, in Indian, and I want to say even like in Japanese or Asiatic cultures, they have more microtones, and they have different scalings of things. So, especially in the Western culture and how that is dominated, you get major and minor keys. And the way that the dominant two instruments of the 20th century have been the guitar and the piano, and the way those are set up are incredibly easy. That's because of ease of play. Piano is more versatile, but because the guitar has been the driving force, it dictates what keys we play. So we easily get shoehorned into E major, E minor, A, D, those are the open strings. Those are the easiest ones to go to. A lot of bands tune down half a step. It doesn't change the fact that you're still playing on that same area. So, yeah, we all learn the same scales, and there it is. You got up to the 7th fret, and it's, if you imagine that sliced off, that's what you're dealing with. And you're really talking about chords that are on the first two strings, that have their root notes in the first two strings up to the 7th fret. I didn't realize I was going to be getting into music theory today. But I did promise that we'd be talking about art as opposed to the artist. So I'm glad that that's the case, because maybe I need to take a closer look into that, because the evidence that I've seen was more so damning. But having said that, I've tried not to go too hard on that. I was never the biggest Led Zeppelin fan. I mean, I love Kashmir, but going to the trouble of doing that open D tuning and then going right back to it unless you have 3 guitars laying around to play for somebody. But yeah, that's Kashmir though. I mean, it's amazing song, and they still, what an amazing duo Jimmy Page and Robert Plant were. So yeah, all that to say, I see your point and Rick Beato's point, and yeah, please, if you're listening to this right now and you've never listened to Rick Beato, hit like, share, and subscribe. Rick Beato is great. He's got a lot of followers, but please stay with us to the end, and then maybe watch some of our videos. We have other analyses, riveting, just as riveting as this. I can't remember who all we talked about, like somebody, like, not on my list, but the guy, his name is escaping me. He was one of the last ones we talked about that he popped into my head. The guy that played Kang, that was recently in the news for, like, who knows what, because there's nothing on camera. Running away from his girlfriend down the street and then posing for photos with fans that were like, hey, can you take a photo with us? And he was like, yeah, just for a quick second, though, because I really have to run away from this woman who's, like, attacking me, and I am for sure going to get in trouble for this somehow, because she's, like, a drunken maniac, and she's gonna, like, stumble around the apartment and stumble her way into, like, breaking her finger and falling in the closet, which is gonna look really bad for me. But yeah, sure, I'll take a photo with you. Cheese. And so he did. You don't remember his name, do you?
No.
Ain't that a bitch? Through the magic of editing, maybe we'll
Yeah, it's those superpowers. I forget that Rolodex of information.
Jonathan Majors. I'm not discounting him, because I think, especially if these allegations and charges are not true, wouldn't that be terrible if the only reason I say it's not that big a deal is because he wasn't around for that long? Because we also have to look at potential.
Because that cost a hefty paycheck from being a mainstay in a Marvel movie.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that character in itself had a lot of potential. I think there was a whole career could have been launched from here, and we have no idea where he was going to go. And I think he actually did an amazing job in what little I've seen him in. And people do get better over time. If you think you look at somebody's like early career and things, and then like compare that to, I don't know, like Gary Oldman in Immortal Beloved or Dracula or something. If you haven't seen those films, Gary Oldman is unrecognizable and amazing. Not to say that he was ever a bad actor,
no.
But like, if you take your craft seriously, you can take a mediocre actor and turn them into a master. And if you're already good, imagine where you go from there. Unless you, like Marlon Brando, just start really phoning it in or something. Like, I don't know why I'm here anymore. I signed a piece of paper and now I'm in front of a bunch of talking animals. Can I leave yet? So I think that would be incredibly sad, because that's the thing too. It didn't talk about Johnny Depp's musical career. He plays music too, which is what he's heavily leaned into. Is it that good? Not really that great. It's not blowing me out of the water, but it's not bad.
I would describe it as they're not doing anything wrong, but they're not doing anything necessarily right either.
Especially the supergroup he's in, with like Joe Perry from Aerosmith,
Alice Cooper.
That feels like a late 80s, early 90s knockoff version of like Guns N' Roses or something. It's really weird, but I bet you going to see him live would be a different experience than just listening to him from YouTube.
Honestly, I was listening to some of their music just the other night, actually. Just
the Vampires?
Yeah, Hollywood Vampires.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this just sounds like Alice Cooper.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, is Alice Cooper is so distinctly Alice Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, like, even like lyrically, I'm like, you could put this on and you could put some of his stuff on, and I'd just be like, yeah, it's just more Alice Cooper.
Not a bad thing, but not a Hollywood Vampires thing.
Not anything mind-blowing.
That's kind of what you get sometimes when you have a supergroup with... Unless it's something that the music is so distinct and the singer is so distinct. Like if you had, say, a group like Rage Against the Machine, say like Tom Morello, sounds so specifically Tom Morello with his like wah, 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 wah kind of guitar stuff that he does. And then like, if you had like a band that was like really iconic, like
Soundgarden?
Like Soundgarden,
yeah.
Yes. Like Chris Cornell's like one of a kind, once in a generation voice.
His haunting wails.
And mash those two things together, then you'd have something that feels like a mashup, because it's like, this sounds like Chris Cornell and Tom Morello teamed up, but it doesn't sound like, I hate their name. So I kind of just, it's weird to think of that group, but Anyway, I had that album that Johnny Depp did with Jeff Beck. It's mostly covers, I think. Again, not bad. There's some songs that he did live, I think, with Jeff that either didn't get recorded or didn't get released, and some of those are actually really good. And there's some good songs on there too. Jeff Beck. So the last person just as to say, like there's potential. The potential of art, I think, is, like if you wrongly accuse somebody, let's say, and this is the caveat of say play devil's advocate and say that somebody's wrongly accused. If you wrongly accuse somebody and let's say they in an extreme situation, they cease to be from self-outflicted harm.
Or what is it, the proper YouTube terms now? Self-unaliving.
Unaliving, yeah. Then all potential is lost for any future works of art. And that's the end of that. And what did I say at the beginning? My personal opinion is art is what makes this society this society. Are we becoming too decadent to where that makes less sense and art is less meaningful? We could get into an argument next time or a few times down the road about specifically what is missing in the rock scene right now. I think a good iconic rock band, but that's just me. I think they're all gone for the most part. There's some lingering about, but even then they're venturing off into other things. So we lose that potential for more good art. Will Johnny Depp ever return to the mainstream? Who knows? It's really hard to say. He's going to continue making films that very few people will ever see because they're not going to get mainstream attention until he's really publicly vindicated in a real way. And the media turned against him as well. That they, leaned in on other things and there's more hit pieces on him, even though the deal is done and he was vindicated in court.
One thing that drives me crazy about how things go today, and don't get me wrong, if there's terrible people out there, we need to get those terrible people in the spotlight, be like, hey, this is terrible. They need to stop. We need to stop this behavior. We need to shut it down. But I think we also need to not be so quick to jump on that.
The bandwagon.
Yeah, the bandwagon to be like, yeah, off them, because sometimes we don't know all the facts.
Yeah.
Especially with the way the media likes to just throw out clickbait. It's like,
yeah, because sex sells.
Yeah.
So
does controversy and drama. So they're dragging someone's name through the mud, ruining their career, ruining their lives over things that didn't even happen.
Conjecture or hearsay or an outright lie. Is it somewhere in the middle? Sometimes, mostly, I think the worst of every story, if there's some validity to it, like the worst thing that we've ever heard Harvey Weinstein do, he probably didn't do that worst thing, but he probably did do 1 degree less 10 other times. Because if you imagine, what was it, 40, 50 women who accused Cosby. This is a fact. This is not an allegedly. These are real accusers came out, not all of them publicly, but a lot of them did put their names down and said this happened to me. And it's just the same story every time. So, and then even like I think it was the civil, I can't remember if it was the civil case or the criminal case, but here's the thing. In that case with Cosby, he didn't dispute the facts of the case. They both said the same thing happened. The only difference was drugs and consensuality. And I'm like, that's it? So you completely, okay. It's amazing to me. Like that's one that is easy for me to believe. And that's what makes me so conflicted about Cosby. Just because I see where the women are coming from on that one. Conversely, Johnny Depp, you listen to, I always had a bad feeling about that one, but people jumped on it and like, oh man, and for a year, it just hung over his head because he didn't fight it. He didn't come out and say anything. He was biding his time, and he was hoping that the court of public opinion would I can't speak for him. I'm just saying this is what I think his thought process was. The court of public opinion will want to hear all the facts. Well, he was wrong about that, at least at the time, because he immediately got dropped by Warner and then eventually Disney. That really his career, because they were going to make another Pirates movie. Like, even the last one being as bad as it was. Who knows if they could have reunited the original cast, they might have come back strong. You never know. How many Fast and Furious movies have they made? Like 15, 16?
come back stronger or not, I definitely say without Johnny Depp, the Pirates movies will definitely suffer.
Yeah, even if they get a huge star like Margot Robbie. I love Margot Robbie. I think she's more versatile than she's been allowed to be. I think she has more range than the movies have let her show. If she were to play a Jack Sparrow type character, I think she would actually do pretty well with that. Would it be the same?
No, because everyone would still be comparing her to Johnny.
Right. And that's the thing. That would be the mistake, is to have her play an analog of the same character. Just like if you do a version of Willy Wonka, you've got to do it drastically different.
Yeah, because you're not going to match Gene Wilder.
No, nobody's ever going to match Gene Wilder. It's almost insane that anyone would think of doing that. I almost think that should have been done as a miniseries or something, because there's no way. Like, Gene Wilder was just such a master. I want to do an episode just about Gene Wilder and how awesome he was.
Yeah, that's definitely in the cards.
Because I could go on for days. So that would be a multi-part series that you would not see coming. Why does he have so much to say about Gene Wilder? If you haven't seen his movies, or at least even some, there's like 20 or 30 minute rundown, either of like his one-liners, delivery, his dramatic pauses. You could teach a masterclass on thespianism and just use Gene Wilder movies.
No.
And that's for drama and comedy. Anyway, the last person I had on the list is Louis C.K., who is, I think it's an unfortunate situation, because there's another one. He doesn't dispute the case against him, really. It's just toxic behavior, and he got it worse than Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When we look at the disproportionate rate, but I mean, like, Bill Cosby is so much more beloved.
I think it's because Louis C.K. was already kind of controversial with his jokes.
Yeah.
It was easier for people to turn on
They're
him.
definitely not family-friendly affair. You don't say to your wife and kids, like, let's turn on some Louis C.K. for some light listening on the road trip. Not that you turn on any good comedy for with your family. There's like Jimmy Carr. I mean, I would.
I mean, unless you got a really cool family. But.
Yeah, I don't. It's just me and my girlfriend, so I don't have to worry about that. If I did have any sucky ass kids, I'd be getting rid of them quick. Like, what? You're not into Bill Hicks? Get. So, Mark Maron in August at the Opera House in Lexington. I'm just saying, just whatever. Anyway, I'm excited. With Louis, he has continued to make things, and he continues to, it's available, just nobody knows about it. You go to his website, and I think you can pay a fee. He did that show that nobody saw with like Alan Alda and Steve Buscemi, and it looks and feels like a really cheap version of Cheers, but it is the most tragic, depressing thing ever. It's like a slog through the darkest parts of humanity, and I can't finish it. I keep trying to get further into it, and I'm like, this puts me into a dark place. I don't know exactly when that was, but I also think there's some validity to something like that existing, and people should be allowed to explore that. I didn't love all of his stand-up comedy, but I think he definitely had a spot out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, what's weird is he actually is really good with electronics. Like, that he studied this for a long time and can, like, Mark Maron, that's what made me think of this, because he and Mark Maron were good friends when they were, like, just starting out. And when they did a podcast together, because they had a big falling out, and then they came back and had, like, it wasn't confrontational, but there was, like, it got heavy, and there was some apologies and tears and on the air. Pretty good listen, if anybody's up for that. Mark Maron, WTF. Better podcast than this, but stay with us. He mentioned to him, like, do you remember that time we found that computer somebody had thrown out on the side of the road, and then you took it back to the apartment and just fixed it? And he was like, yeah. And he's like, that was crazy. And he's like, no, it wasn't. I just know how to do that. And he's like, how did you know? And he's like, I studied that.
Yeah.
And he just looked at it as it was like no big deal, and funny that, like, I can be two things. I can know this and also do comedy or acting or whatever. Anyway, that one might be the most, I don't want to say tragic thing, because he deserved something. He deserved something bad. Was it, to be held accountable? Where does that line stand? What punishment is that? What does that deserve? Does he deserve to have to go away forever? This debate has been raging on for not just about him, but for all of these people.
Yeah.
Did they do something? Was it wrong, borne out in a court of law that they're innocent, do all their accolades come back? Do all their opportunities come back? No, it doesn't, because not everybody gets a letter in the mail that said, oh, and by the way, Johnny Depp is innocent. Amber, lost essentially in court. Essentially, I say essentially, ostensibly. It's the same with Jonathan Majors. It's not it's not what people think.
Because they're viewed as a liability from that point on.
Yeah. And you can't wash away that stigma. You can't unring that bell. For some people, they'll always think, I mean, yeah, but...
It's like, even if they didn't do it, do I want that kind of attention on my project?
Right. And there's still things that they do that got brought up that you might disagree with. Like, does Johnny Depp have a drug problem? He readily admits to in the past he has. That he has sought treatment for several times. He has had a drinking problem. There you go. But, I mean, her dog did step on that bee. Just saying. That was never in dispute.
Did we ever get testimony from that dog?
We did not.
It's up in the air.
Yeah. So, that's all I got. My hope is that people can be more objective about things. And even if it's... like you said, your tag at the end of the previous episode was just listen to them on Spotify. If you genuinely feel like something, I hope that people can still enjoy art or find a way to, even and dispense your own brand of justice, not vigilante style, just to be very clear. But if it is, I don't know, finding a copy of a book at a library or borrowing it from a friend, say, man, this guy's involved with that one cult. I don't want to listen to him anymore, but I really want to listen to that one song. And a friend of yours has it on CD. Just borrow it.
Yeah.
Then you're not giving any money to that person, or listen to it on...
Or go to secondhand shops. That way the secondhand shops get the money and not the artist.
And we need those to stay open. Like half-price books, any mom and pop record shop, they always have old CDs coming in, used CDs or old records. So keep art alive. There's something of value to be gained from everyone. And that's all I got. And I just wanted to focus more on the art I think we focused more on the artist last time, although I did fall into that trap a little bit this time. But I think I got it all out of my system. So I yield my time.
So yeah, I think that's a good place to end. Just be objective. Look at all the facts before we persecute. There's a reason in our court of law it's innocent until proven guilty. And I think our court of public opinion should be the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, make up your own mind. Draw your own lines. If it's too much for you, don't support it. If you don't agree, go ahead and listen to them. Go ahead and buy that painting. But yeah, until next time, be sure to like and subscribe, share with your friends, follow us on social media if you're not. We're on Facebook and Instagram. And until next time, see ya.